Thank you for the kind welcome. It's a special feeling for me standing here, considering that nearly all of the previous speakers could be my grandchildren. So I'm particularly grateful that I'm still being considered for such an important event. Now, a lifelong pursuit of scientific breakthroughs, and you'll see that this lifelong means more than 60 years. Now, the word breakthroughs is a bit high-flying. As a scientist, I would say pursuit of new scientific knowledge. But let's leave it breakthroughs. I'll comment on that. The title was provided to me by the organizers. Now, the lifelong pursuit enables me to give you some perspective of past achievements onto which present work is based. It also gives me a chance to actually talk about some aspects that could be breakthroughs, as you will see immediately. Now, how do we define a breakthrough? Now, in biomedical research, usually a breakthrough is published in an NSC journal, in Nature, Science, or Cell. Actually, if a graduate student in my university in Shanghai gets a first author paper in one of these three journals, she or he is immediately promoted to assistant professor. Never mind the age. Good. Now, if I define a breakthrough as being published in Nature, then this is my first breakthrough. This picture shows me training high jumping in Switzerland in 1956, and it was published in Nature in 2015. So my first breakthrough was I was 17 years old. Now, of course, I expected more breakthroughs in sports. I mean, breakthrough is an Olympic medal, and I terribly failed, so I had to change. So I started to do NMR, nuclear magnetic resonance, and I used this technique in structural biology. This is a picture by NMR of my hemoglobin. So it was mentioned that I worked in the telephone company, Bell Labs, and I didn't know anything better to do than take blood out of my arm, put it in the machine, and have a look at it. Now, what happened was that there are crazy lines. All on the lower level are crazy lines that had never been seen before. And it made me famous right away, worldwide. It was my career. And it kept me busy all the way until with anti-doping, hemoglobin concentration has a lot to do with competitive sports, and so I was involved in anti-doping activities until late. Now, what about structural biology? Structural biology formally started in 1962 when a Nobel Prize was given. Most of you know that the DNA double helix has been awarded at that time, but also Perutz and Kendrew were awarded the prize for having studied the structure of hemoglobin, of that same protein of which you have seen the NMR spectrum of my own blood. Now look at this. This is a structure for which Perutz and Kendrew got the Nobel Prize. You have to figure that, you see, all day today we see beautiful visualization of anything by computers. There were no computers. These are laminated wood platelets that were cut out carefully and pasted on top of each other, and that was the view of the molecule. Of course, no single atom can be seen, it's just a diffuse shape. So a lot could be done, and after my NMR spectrum was recorded, it looked like this. So that was a breakthrough for me personally. Now let me talk about the next, which I think is a real breakthrough, and it is also a breakthrough that had big effect on a lot of people. And I'm talking here about mad cow disease, or bovine spongiform encephalopathy. It is one of a group of diseases, transmissible spongiform encephalopathies in humans, the Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease, and what is more important, Alzheimer's disease, which is rampant in the elderly human population, is related closely to prion disease. Now, I was born in a farmhouse. I lived in a farmhouse for the first 2 decades of my life. And of course, in Switzerland, we cherish our cows. So I had contact with cows. This cow goes on vacation in the mountains. That's when they carry flowers. But then came the big crisis of BSC, of the mad cow disease crisis. And it wasn't clear that this crisis was largely related to a particular protein, namely the prion protein. And in 1996, the crisis in England was at the very top. The Minister of Science of England went on television with his 5-year-old daughter and had her eat a beef hamburger to demonstrate to the population that there was no danger in eating beef. But that's how the cattle looked at the time in England, and hundreds of thousands had to be killed and burned. And then it swept over to France, to Switzerland, not to Germany for a long time, until I had an interview with Die Zeit and mentioned that the reason that Germany had no mad cow disease is that our colleagues didn't know how to detect it. 2 months later, there were 350 cases of mad cow disease in Germany. And we solved the structure of the prion protein. Nobody has ever seen anything like this. See, the central part, the green and yellow part, that's how we know about proteins. But all that spin web around was completely new. And we found that the same structure of the prion protein was in bovines, in humans, in pigs, in chicken, in goats, and so on. And of course, these pictures could be shown to politicians, and it scared them a lot. So, you see, the press immediately reacted when we published this structure. I show here, see, this was the 11th of July, 1996, Couvage pour le prion. That says more or less, now we got it, it's gone. Then here, I show you some text from Le Monde, 16 November of 2000, l'erreur de Monsieur Chirac, les professeurs Wüthrich et Chris Bostock ont dit l'urgence de mettre au point de... I take it most of you don't speak French. It simply means we said to the press that Chirac is completely wrong and he has to reconsider what he is doing with regard to mad cow disease. And then a little later, Jospin, the Prime Minister of France, said, vache folle, Jospin veut rétablir la confiance. So everybody then, after Chirac's error, was uncertain and he wanted to re-establish confidence. Then Bernard Kouchner, the Minister of Science and well, I think he was actually Minister of Science and Health questions. It says, Wachefol, Bernard Kouchner played en faveur d'une pédagogie du risque. So what had happened after we wrote about the error of the president was that the whole cabinet has to come to a meeting of the French Academy of Sciences and listen to us. They were all sitting in the first row, and they had to listen to us. And as a result of it all, mad cow disease is gone. It's gone. There's been no mad cow disease since 2004. Thanks to the fact that the politicians did the right thing and listened to us. They listened to us because they were scared, of course. Well, today I'm quoted, man stelle sich vor, Alzheimer ließe sich mit ein paar neuen Erlassen einfach stoppen. How could you do the same with Alzheimer's? Imagine we could just tell the politicians to establish some rules and then it's gone. That would be the equivalent to mad cow disease. Unfortunately, that's not where we are. All right. Now, I'm going to tell you how we became able to study such structures. You see, all this is moving very fast. We're talking about movements that are of the order of 10 to the 10 per second in frequency. And originally, these movements were observed by Robert Brown in 1827. Brown was a botanist. He lost some pollen into a water beaker and observed that these pollen were moving, rather than just sitting on the water. He didn't understand what he saw, but Einstein did understand what Brown had seen. And then Einstein showed that these movements are stochastic, that is random, and very fast, at very high frequency, 10 to the 10, 10 to the 11th per second. Now, when you have a molecule in a liquid that moves at these high frequencies, you cannot make a sharp picture. I mean, the limit of making a photographic picture is maybe 10 to the minus 4 10 to the 4 per second. We are at 10 to the 10 per second. So one had to find out how one could still get a sharp picture. Now imagine the following. If you know all the distances between any two atoms in this structure, then you have defined the structure. And the distance is the same, independent of whether it's in the upper left or lower right angle, or whether it is horizontal or vertical. In other words, the distance is invariant under rotation and translation. Now we only needed a technique to measure distances, and that was two-dimensional NMR. That was by 1982. Cozy, Nosy, Sexy, and Foxy did the job. Richard Ernst got the Nobel Prize for 2D NMR and Fourier transform NMR. We worked together for more than a decade on this. And this is such a spectrum. And each point in this spectrum gives us one distance. And then we just have to develop mathematical tools. You see, distances are much more than the 3 dimensions in which we describe the molecules. So we go from n,000 dimensions, for example, 7,000 dimensional distance space with distance geometry methodology to the 3-dimensional space of molecules. Then we get the molecule, and about 20 years later, the Swedes have been able to understand what we have done and got it done. I want to spend the last minute indicating to you what I'm doing today. On the one hand, in China, I continue our studies on GPCRs. You have heard about GPCRs earlier today. We have 800 GPCRs in our body. 40% of all prescription medicines today target a GPCR. And it is our driving force is to improve the basis for future developments of medicines against just about anything. I have a second line, which I have just started, that's probably little known to you. It is about sarcopenia. Sarcopenia is a loss of muscle mass and muscle strength in the aging population. So the point here is to improve the health span during the ever-lengthening lifespan that we have already reached with modern medicine. So I'm working in Zurich and in California on sarcopenia, which has been defined or accepted as a disease by the World Health Organization in 2016. We are searching for parameters to define when a person can be classified as being diseased with sarcopenia and therefore be supported by the health insurance, for example. The same has happened with osteoporosis in 1996, so only 25 years ago. The point of this all is twofold. I can now come back with my education as a physical education teacher to help popularize physical education classes specifically for elderly people who are in danger of getting sick with sarcopenia. And the second one is that about as many people are in retirement homes, cannot take care of themselves because of sarcopenia, as there are people who have the same situation due to Alzheimer's disease. At the present point, we are at a difficult situation with Alzheimer's, and therefore I believe it's worthwhile to invest energy in studies of sarcopenia and osteoporosis and means to improve the situation for these people. Thank you.